He thought he had everything figured out. Every excuse rehearsed, every message deleted, every late night explained away with a calm smile. To the outside world they looked like a normal married couple. Comfortable, steady, unbreakable. But behind closed doors something had shifted. She felt it before she could prove it. That quiet change in the air. The way he stopped looking at her the same way. The way silence started taking up more space than words. And while he believed he was the smartest one in the room, he had no idea his wife was already putting the pieces together. Her name was Maya. She wasn't dramatic or loud or the type to jump to conclusions. She believed in communication, in trust, in giving people the benefit of the doubt. For years she had built her life around that belief. She supported his dreams, adjusted her schedule around his, and told herself that marriage meant patience, even when things felt off. So when her husband, Daniel, started coming home later than usual, she didn't accuse him. She listened. When he guarded his phone like it held state secrets, she didn't confront him. She observed. And when his affection slowly turned into obligation, she told herself it was just a phase. But deep down, Maya knew something wasn't right. You don't forget the rhythm of someone you've loved for years. You don't miss the small signs unless you're choosing not to see them. Daniel's laughter felt forced. His apologies came too quickly. And the distance between them wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Still, he played his role well. He talked about work stress, blamed traffic, blamed exhaustion, blamed everything except the truth. And Maya let him think she believed it all. What Daniel didn't realize was that Maya wasn't blind. She was quiet. There's a difference. While he thought she was distracted by her own routine, she was paying attention in ways he never expected. She noticed patterns. The same nights he stayed late. The same name that popped up on his screen before he turned it face down. The way he showered immediately after coming home. None of it was enough on its own, but together, it painted a picture she could no longer ignore. The betrayal didn't hit her all at once. It came in waves. First confusion, then doubt, then a slow-burning ache that settled in her chest. She questioned herself more than she questioned him. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe marriage just changes people. Maybe love isn't supposed to feel exciting forever. But then came the moment that tipped everything over. A small, careless mistake on his part. One detail he forgot to cover. And in that moment, Maya stopped guessing. She knew. It would have been easy to explode. To scream, to cry, to demand answers. But Maya didn't do that. She did something Daniel never saw coming. She stayed calm. Almost too calm. She smiled at dinner. She asked about his day. She played her part perfectly while her heart was quietly rewriting the rules of their marriage. Because Maya wasn't just hurt, she was awake now. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Daniel grew more confident as time passed. He thought he was getting away with everything. He believed his lies were smooth, his stories believable. He even started treating Maya with a kind of careless comfort, like someone who no longer feared consequences. That was his biggest mistake. He underestimated her. He thought silence meant weakness. He thought patience meant ignorance. And he thought love meant she would never challenge him. What he didn't know was that Maya had started asking herself different questions. Not, why is he doing this? But what do I deserve? Not, how do I save this marriage? But, how do I protect myself? She began to see her life from the outside, like a story unfolding, and for the first time, she imagined a version of herself that didn't accept betrayal as her fate. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about hurting him the way he hurt her. It was about truth. About dignity. About refusing to be the only honest person in a dishonest marriage. Maya understood something powerful that many people don't realize until it's too late. You don't need to rush when you finally see clearly. Sometimes the smartest move is to wait, to plan, and to let the truth reveal itself at the right moment. Every conversation between them now had weight. Every shared laugh carried tension. Daniel thought he was in control, but the balance had already shifted. Maya was no longer reacting, she was deciding. And while he continued his affair, convinced that he was untouchable, she was preparing for a moment that would change everything. A moment where masks would fall and choices would have consequences. The scariest part wasn't discovering the cheating husband she never thought she'd have. It was realizing how strong she had become without even trying. The woman who once avoided conflict was now standing quietly in the middle of it, steady and unafraid. Daniel had no idea what was coming. He had no idea that the same intelligence he used to deceive was about to be outmatched by something far more powerful, clarity. And just when he thought the story would end with him walking away clean, Maya made her move. Not loudly. Not publicly. But in a way that would leave him questioning every decision he'd made. The truth was about to surface, and when it did, nothing would be the same again. Because this time, Maya wasn't the one being fooled. She was the one holding the final card.
Maya didn't rush into action. That wasn't her style. She had always believed that big decisions made in emotional storms usually led to regret. So instead of confronting Daniel or demanding explanations, she slowed everything down. She paid closer attention to their daily life, almost like she was studying a stranger who happened to live in her house. She noticed how he had begun to narrate his own movements, explaining things she never asked about. "I'll be late tonight. Work is crazy. My phone died. That's why I didn't reply." Each sentence sounded practiced, like a script repeated too many times. Their home, once warm and familiar, now felt like a stage. Daniel played the role of a caring husband just enough to avoid suspicion. He brought flowers randomly, cooked dinner on weekends, and made sure to ask about her day. To anyone watching from the outside, it would have looked like a marriage going through a normal rough patch. But Maya felt the hollowness beneath it all. The gestures didn't come from love anymore. They came from guilt. Maya started thinking back to the early days of their relationship. Daniel had been charming, confident, and attentive. He had made her feel chosen. That was what hurt the most now, the feeling of being replaced without her consent. Somewhere along the line, she had become an afterthought in her own marriage. And yet, Daniel still expected her loyalty, her support, her silence. She didn't know who the other woman was. Not yet. And strangely, that mystery bothered her less than Daniel's ability to lie so easily. She wondered how long it had been going on. Weeks? Months? Longer? She replayed old memories in her head, searching for moments that now felt suspicious. That weekend trip he took alone. The sudden interest in dressing better. The emotional distance she had blamed on stress. Every memory felt heavier now, like it carried a hidden meaning. Maya confided in no one. Not her friends, not her family. This wasn't because she didn't trust them, but because she needed space to think without outside opinions shaping her choices. She knew how quickly people jumped to conclusions, how easily advice turned into pressure. Right now, she needed clarity, not noise. So she carried the weight alone, letting it sharpen her awareness instead of breaking her down. Daniel, meanwhile, grew more relaxed. The longer Maya stayed calm, the more confident he became. He stopped checking her reactions. He stopped being careful with his tone. Sometimes, he even looked bored when she spoke, like her presence was a distraction from the life he really wanted. That hurt more than any argument could have. But Maya didn't react. She stored everything away. At night, when Daniel slept beside her, Maya stared at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. She wasn't plotting revenge. She was rebuilding her sense of self. She asked herself hard questions she had avoided for years. When had she stopped speaking up? When had she started accepting less than she deserved? And why had she believed that love meant enduring pain quietly? She began reclaiming small pieces of herself. She adjusted her schedule, spent more time on things that made her feel grounded, and stopped waiting around for Daniel's attention. These changes were subtle, but they shifted the balance between them. Daniel noticed, even if he didn't fully understand why. There was a new steadiness in Maya, a calm that didn't ask for approval. It unsettled him. One evening, Daniel mentioned a name casually during dinner. Just once. He didn't linger on it, didn't explain who the person was. But Maya felt her chest tighten. She kept her expression neutral, nodded, and continued eating. Inside, her instinct screamed. That single moment confirmed what she had already suspected. The truth was closer than ever, hovering just out of reach. Maya began to realize that betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about the lies layered on top of lies. About the way Daniel had rewritten their shared reality to suit himself. He had made choices for both of them without ever giving her a voice. And that realization changed how she saw him. The man she married wasn't just flawed, he was calculated. Still, she waited. Not out of fear, but out of intention. Maya understood that timing mattered. She didn't want half-truths or rushed confrontations. She wanted the full picture. She wanted to understand the depth of his deception before deciding what her next step would be. Knowledge, she believed, was power. Daniel continued living his double life, unaware that Maya was no longer in the dark. He underestimated her silence, mistaking it for acceptance. He didn't notice how she listened more than she spoke, how her questions were carefully chosen, how her presence had become observant rather than emotional. He believed he was still in control of the narrative. But something was shifting beneath the surface. Maya felt it. The truth had a way of surfacing, especially when lies became too comfortable. And while she didn't yet know how everything would unfold, she knew one thing for certain. She would not be blindsided. Not anymore. The marriage now existed in a strange in-between space. Not broken, but not whole. Not honest, but not exposed. Every shared moment carried an unspoken tension, like a storm waiting for the right conditions to break. Daniel laughed, made plans, talked about the future. Maya listened, wondering how someone could speak so easily about tomorrow while betraying the present. And somewhere in the middle of all this quiet observation and internal reckoning, Maya realized that the story wasn't just about a cheating husband. It was about a woman standing at a crossroads, deciding who she would be when the truth finally came out. The calm before the storm stretched on, heavy and uncertain. And with every passing day, the moment of reckoning drew closer, even if neither of them said it out loud.
The more Maya watched, the clearer everything became. It wasn't just what Daniel did anymore, but how he did it. His confidence had shifted into something sharper, almost careless. He no longer tried as hard to hide his impatience. If she asked a simple question, he sighed like she was asking for too much. If she went quiet, he barely noticed. It was as if he had already mentally moved on, while still enjoying the safety of a marriage that made his life look stable from the outside. At the same time, Maya started seeing how deeply intertwined their lives were. Shared finances, shared friends, shared history. This wasn't a situation where she could simply walk away without consequences. Every choice felt heavy. Every option came with loss. That was part of what made Daniel's betrayal so cruel. He hadn't just risked their relationship, he had gambled with her entire sense of security without her permission. A small subplot began to unfold at Daniel's workplace. Maya didn't know the details, but she could sense pressure building there too. He complained more often, snapped at coworkers on phone calls, and came home irritated in ways that didn't match his stories. Whatever he was juggling, it was slipping. And Maya wondered if the affair was no longer just an escape, but another source of stress he couldn't control. One afternoon, Maya ran into someone she and Daniel both knew. The conversation was brief and casual, but it left her unsettled. There was a pause when Daniel's name came up, a look that lingered a second too long. Maya caught it immediately. It wasn't confirmation, but it was enough to tell her that others might already sense the cracks in their marriage. The idea that people could be whispering behind her back made her stomach tighten, but she kept her composure. From Daniel's perspective, things felt manageable. He believed Maya was emotionally distant but harmless. He told himself she was just tired, just distracted. He convinced himself that as long as he didn't confess, nothing would truly change. That was how he justified everything, by pretending silence meant consent. He didn't stop to consider that Maya's silence was deliberate, not defeated. At home, the tension grew thicker. Conversations stayed shallow. Important topics were avoided. When Maya looked at Daniel now, she didn't see her husband first. She saw someone capable of deception, someone who prioritized his comfort over her truth. That shift was painful, but it was also grounding. It stopped her from romanticizing the past or clinging to what the marriage used to be. Maya began writing things down. Not evidence exactly, but thoughts, feelings, questions. She needed somewhere safe to unload everything she couldn't say out loud. On those pages, she admitted how angry she was. How disappointed. How afraid. She admitted that part of her still loved Daniel, and another part barely recognized him anymore. That internal conflict tore at her daily. There were moments when Daniel almost slipped. A sentence cut off halfway. A defensive reaction where none was needed. Each time Maya noticed. Each time she stayed calm. Her restraint frustrated him more than anger ever could. He wanted either forgiveness or confrontation, anything that would let him feel resolved. What he got instead was uncertainty. The mystery of the other woman loomed constantly. Maya wondered if she knew about the marriage. If she believed Daniel's version of events. If she saw him as charming or flawed. Maya didn't feel hatred toward her, just a quiet curiosity mixed with sadness. This wasn't a competition she wanted to win. It was a situation she wanted to understand before it consumed her. As days turned into weeks, Daniel began testing boundaries. Staying out later. Being less careful with his phone. Maya saw it all. She also saw how quickly trust erodes when honesty disappears. Even neutral actions now felt suspicious. And that, she realized, was one of the deepest damages betrayal causes. It poisons even innocent moments. From the outside, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting matches. No public scenes. But inside the house the air felt heavy. Like both of them were holding their breath. Maya sensed that Daniel believed time was on his side. That eventually, everything would settle into a new normal where he got to keep both worlds separate. That belief made her chest ache. Maya started imagining different futures. One where she confronted him immediately. One where she waited longer. One where she left quietly. None of them felt simple. None of them felt painless. What she did know was that she refused to be rushed into a decision by someone else's lies. This was her life too. Daniel, on the other hand, was growing restless. The lack of reaction from Maya unsettled him. He began questioning whether she knew more than she let on. He watched her more closely now, studying her expressions the way she once studied his. A subtle power shift was happening, even if neither of them named it. One night, Daniel asked her a question that caught her off guard. It wasn't an accusation, just a casual comment wrapped in curiosity. Maya answered calmly, but her heart raced. That single moment confirmed something important. He was no longer completely comfortable. The certainty he once had was cracking. The marriage now felt like a chessboard, each move deliberate, each pause loaded with meaning. Maya wasn't trying to trap Daniel, but she wasn't protecting him anymore either. She was protecting herself. Every choice she made was rooted in that intention. As the days passed, the tension continued to build, slow and steady. Secrets layered over silence. Assumptions piled on top of fear. Neither of them spoke the truth, but both felt its weight pressing down. And somewhere between what was said and what was hidden, the story moved closer to a moment neither of them could avoid. Maya didn't know exactly how or when everything would come to light. But she knew this much: the illusion Daniel relied on was fragile. And once it cracked, there would be no way to pretend nothing happened. The calm stretched on, uneasy and unresolved, as both of them waited, knowingly or not, for the truth to finally demand its place. By now, the tension between them had become impossible to ignore. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it lived in the pauses between words, in the way their eyes no longer met for long. Maya felt like she was walking through her own home on alert, aware of every sound, every movement. Daniel sensed it too. He just didn't understand where it was coming from. Or maybe he did but was afraid to face it. Daniel started changing his behavior again, but not in a way that brought them closer. He became overly careful, almost too polite, as if trying to reset something that had already slipped too far. He asked Maya if she was happy. He suggested small trips. He talked about the future again casually, like nothing had changed. The words felt empty to Maya. She listened, nodded, and said little. Inside, her thoughts were loud. She wondered how someone could talk about forever while hiding something so big in the present. Maya, meanwhile, felt a strange mix of calm and anxiety. Calm because she trusted her instincts now. Anxiety because she knew she was approaching a point where pretending would no longer be possible. Every day felt like borrowed time. She could sense that one wrong move, one unexpected moment, could bring everything to the surface. The pressure began to show on Daniel. He was more distracted than ever. His phone buzzed more often and he checked it with nervous urgency. When Maya entered a room unexpectedly, he flinched slightly before recovering. Those small reactions told her everything she needed to know. The lies were starting to weigh on him, even if he wouldn't admit it. One evening, Daniel came home later than usual, visibly unsettled. He barely touched his food and spent most of the night staring into space. Maya watched him quietly, noting how different he looked when he wasn't performing confidence. There was fear there. Maybe not of losing Maya, but of losing control over the story he had created. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to Daniel's breathing, steady and unaware. Her mind replayed every moment that had led them here. The love they once shared. The trust she had given freely. The betrayal she never asked for. She didn't cry. She didn't feel weak. She felt focused. Whatever came next, she wanted to face it on her terms. The next few days passed slowly, each one heavier than the last. Maya noticed Daniel watching her more closely now. He asked subtle questions, trying to read between her answers. It was clear he suspected something, but not enough to stop what he was doing. That contradiction made Maya realize how deeply divided he was. Part of him wanted to keep lying and part of him feared being exposed. Maya also felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. She wasn't just waiting anymore. She was choosing the right moment. Timing mattered. She wanted the truth to stand on its own, undeniable, without shouting or chaos. She wanted clarity, not excuses. One afternoon, something small but significant happened. Daniel forgot himself for just a moment. A name appeared on his screen while Maya was sitting nearby. He moved too late. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Maya didn't react. She didn't ask a question. She simply looked away. That single second shifted everything. Daniel knew. He knew she had seen it. From that point on, nothing felt the same. Daniel became tense, overly aware of every word he said. His confidence crumbled into defensiveness. Maya, on the other hand, felt steadier than ever. She didn't need explanations anymore. The truth was no longer theoretical. It was real and it was close. Their conversations turned careful, almost scripted. Both of them choosing words like they were walking through a minefield. Maya noticed how often Daniel tried to fill the silence now, how uncomfortable he was when she stayed quiet. The roles had reversed completely. He was the one waiting. She was the one holding power. Maya began to sense that the situation couldn't stay unresolved much longer. The tension was too heavy. The lies too fragile. She could feel the story reaching a breaking point, even if she didn't know exactly how it would unfold. She wasn't afraid of that moment anymore. She was ready for it. Daniel, however, was unraveling. The affair that once made him feel clever now felt like a trap closing in. He feared exposure, feared judgment, feared consequences he hadn't fully considered. He watched Maya closely, trying to guess her next move, unaware that she had already made peace with whatever came next. The house felt different now. Charged. Every shared space carried an unspoken awareness that something big was coming. Maya moved through her days with quiet determination. Daniel moved through his with growing unease. Neither spoke the truth, but both felt it looming. And as the distance between them narrowed toward an inevitable confrontation, one thing became clear. This story was no longer about whether the truth would come out. It was about how and who would be ready when it did. The calm was gone. The waiting was almost over. And the moment that would change everything was closer than either of them realized. The shift came quietly, almost unnoticed at first. It wasn't a confrontation or an argument. It was something far more unsettling. Daniel started being unusually attentive again, but this time it felt different from before. Not guilty. Strategic. He asked about Maya's plans, her schedule, who she spoke to during the day. The questions were casual on the surface, but Maya sensed the tension beneath them. It was as if he was trying to figure out how much she knew without asking directly. Maya felt it immediately. This wasn't panic anymore. This was calculation. Daniel wasn't just afraid of being exposed, he was preparing for something. That realization sent a chill through her. Up until now, she had believed she was ahead of him emotionally. But now the game felt closer, tighter, more dangerous in its own quiet way. Then came the message. Maya wasn't looking for it. She wasn't snooping or digging. It arrived on her phone late one evening from an unfamiliar number. No greeting. No explanation. Just a short sentence that made her heart stop. I think we need to talk. There are things you should know. For a long moment, Maya couldn't breathe. Her hands felt cold as she stared at the screen. The timing was too precise to be random. Whoever this was knew about the marriage. Knew about Daniel. And knew enough to reach out to her directly. The other woman. Or someone connected to her. Either way, the story had just taken a sharp turn. Maya didn't reply right away. She needed time to think. This was the second plot twist she hadn't planned for. Up until now, she had been controlling the pace, choosing silence, gathering clarity. This message threatened to rip that control away. It introduced a new variable she couldn't predict. That night, Daniel noticed her distraction. He asked if everything was okay. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered if he already knew about the message. If this was part of his plan. Or if the situation was slipping beyond his control too. She told him she was tired and went to bed early, her mind racing. The next day Daniel was restless. He checked his phone constantly, paced during calls, and avoided eye contact. Maya watched him from a distance, connecting dots she hadn't seen before. What if the affair wasn't as secret as he thought? What if the other woman was no longer content with lies? What if the truth was about to explode from multiple directions at once? Maya finally replied to the message with a single line, "What do you want me to know?" The response came faster than she expected. "He told me you already knew. That you were okay with it." That lie hit harder than any other. Not because it surprised her, but because it revealed just how far Daniel was willing to go to protect himself. He hadn't just cheated. He had rewritten Maya's role in the story to suit his narrative. He had made her complicit in his betrayal without her consent. The stakes instantly doubled. This was no longer just about a cheating husband and a broken marriage. This was about reputation, truth, and the stories people tell when they're cornered. Maya realized that if she stayed silent now, Daniel would continue shaping the narrative for everyone involved. At the same time, she felt a strange clarity settle in. The message confirmed what her instincts had been telling her all along. Daniel wasn't just careless, he was manipulative. And that changed everything. She didn't respond again. Not yet. She needed to think, to plan, to decide how much of this truth she wanted to carry alone, and how much she was willing to let surface. Daniel, sensing the tension rising, tried to regain control. He suggested counseling. He talked about honesty and rebuilding trust, using words that sounded hollow coming from him. Maya listened without reacting. Inside, she wondered how someone could talk about trust while actively lying to multiple people at once. Another unexpected layer emerged when Maya discovered something else, purely by accident. A financial detail that didn't add up. A shared account showing transactions she didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, easy to dismiss. But together they pointed to a deeper betrayal. This wasn't just emotional. It was practical. It affected her future in ways she hadn't considered before. Now the conflict had teeth. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about security, stability, and the life she had helped build. Daniel's affair was bleeding into every corner of their shared world, and the damage was spreading. Maya felt the walls closing in from all sides. The other woman waiting for answers. Daniel growing more nervous and unpredictable. The weight of decisions she could no longer delay. Every option felt urgent now. Silence was no longer neutral, it was risky. One evening, Daniel asked her directly if she trusted him. The question hung in the air between them, heavy and loaded. Maya held his gaze, her heart pounding. She wanted to say everything. To tear down the lies in one breath. But she didn't. Not yet. She simply said she was thinking. That answer terrified him. From that moment on, the house felt like a pressure cooker. Every sound felt louder. Every glance felt loaded with meaning. Maya could sense that Daniel was reaching the end of his ability to pretend. And she knew that once the truth came out, it wouldn't be a quiet moment. It would change everything. The second plot twist had shifted the balance completely. The affair was no longer hidden. The lies were no longer contained. And the story was no longer just between husband and wife. Too many people were now holding pieces of the truth. As Maya stood at the edge of this unraveling, one thing was clear. The next move, whoever made it, would push everything past the point of no return. And when that moment arrived, there would be no controlling how the truth landed. The moment arrived on an ordinary evening, which somehow made it heavier. There was no dramatic setup, no raised voices beforehand. Daniel walked into the house carrying the same tired expression he'd worn for weeks, but this time Maya didn't look away. She didn't pretend to be busy. She didn't soften herself. She waited until he put his keys down and turned toward her, and then she spoke. "We need to talk." The words landed hard. Daniel froze for just a second, long enough to give himself away. He nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting this moment but hoped it would never come. They sat across from each other at the table where they had once planned trips, celebrated small wins, and talked about their future. Now it felt like neutral ground, stripped of emotion. Maya didn't accuse him right away. She didn't raise her voice. She told him what she knew. About the lies. The name on his phone. The message she received. The money that didn't make sense. She spoke calmly, clearly, leaving no room for denial. Each sentence tightened the space around Daniel until he had nowhere left to hide. At first he tried. He minimized. He blamed stress. He said it wasn't serious. He said it just happened. The usual words people reach for when they're cornered. But Maya didn't react. She simply looked at him, steady and unmoved, and that's when the truth finally spilled out. Yes, there was another woman. Yes, it had been going on longer than he admitted. Yes, he had lied to both of them. The confession came in pieces, uneven and defensive, but it came. The cheating husband who thought he was smart was finally exposed, sitting in the middle of his own mess. Maya listened until he finished. She felt sadness, yes, but also relief. The tension that had lived in her body for months loosened its grip. The truth, even when painful, had a way of doing that. She told him she wasn't shocked. She told him she had known for a long time. And that was the moment Daniel truly realized he had underestimated her. He asked if there was any chance to fix things. He talked about mistakes and second chances. But Maya's decision had already formed long before this conversation. She told him calmly that trust wasn't something you rebuild with words alone, and that the marriage as it was couldn't survive what he had done. That should have been the end of it. The confrontation. The resolution. But that's when the final twist surfaced. Maya told him she had already spoken to the other woman. Daniel's face drained of color. Not to confront her. Not to threaten her. But to tell her the truth. The full truth. About the marriage. About the lies Daniel had told both of them. About how he had painted Maya as someone who knew and didn't care. The other woman hadn't known. She had been lied to just as deeply. The fallout was immediate. The affair ended the same day. The fantasy Daniel had built collapsed under the weight of exposure. The double life he thought he was managing so cleverly vanished in a matter of hours. But Maya wasn't done. She revealed that she had also taken steps to protect herself financially. Quietly. Legally. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, just smart, careful decisions made in advance. Daniel realized then that while he was busy lying, Maya had been preparing. Not out of revenge but out of self-respect. The power dynamic flipped completely. Daniel wasn't angry. He was stunned. He had spent months thinking he was in control, only to find out that Maya had been several steps ahead the entire time. The woman he thought was passive had been quietly reclaiming her agency. They didn't yell. They didn't fight. The end of their marriage came in silence, heavy but certain. Daniel packed a bag that night. Maya watched him go without tears, not because she didn't care, but because she had already grieved the version of him she thought she married. In the days that followed, reality settled in. Friends asked questions. Stories spread. But this time, the truth traveled faster than the lies. Maya didn't overshare. She didn't play the victim. She simply told her story honestly, and that was enough. Daniel, on the other hand, faced consequences he hadn't imagined. The loss of trust. The loss of credibility. The realization that being smart with lies only works until someone chooses to see clearly. And just when it seemed like everything had reached its conclusion, one last detail surfaced. A quiet realization that shifted the entire story once more. Maya understood that the real victory wasn't exposing the cheating husband or ending the affair. It was choosing herself without needing validation from anyone else. The unexpected twist wasn't what Daniel lost, it was what Maya gained. She didn't walk away bitter. She walked away awake, stronger, grounded, and free from a story that no longer served her. The man who thought he was smart learned the hardest lesson of all too late. And the woman he underestimated stepped into a future she finally controlled, on her own terms. The weeks after Daniel left were quieter than Maya expected. Not empty, just calm in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The house no longer felt tense. The air didn't feel heavy. For the first time in months, she could breathe without feeling like she was waiting for something to break. The silence wasn't painful anymore. It was peaceful. There were practical things to handle, of course. Conversations that needed to happen. Papers to sign. Decisions about shared responsibilities. None of it was easy, but none of it felt confusing either. The clarity Maya had gained carried her through each step. She didn't rush and she didn't drag things out. She handled everything with the same quiet strength that had surprised everyone, including herself. Daniel tried to reach out a few times. Short messages. Apologies that came too late. Explanations that sounded familiar now, stripped of their power. Maya read them without anger. She didn't respond. Not because she wanted to punish him, but because she had already said everything that mattered. Closure didn't require another conversation. The other woman sent one final message as well. It wasn't dramatic. Just honest. She apologized for her part, even though she had been misled. Maya appreciated that. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it did mean letting go of resentment that didn't belong to her. That chapter closed quietly without bitterness. Slowly, Maya began rebuilding her life in small, intentional ways. She rearranged the house, moving furniture, changing colors, making the space feel like hers again. She reconnected with friends she had drifted from. She started saying yes to things she once postponed. None of it was about proving anything. It was about rediscovering herself outside the shadow of betrayal. People reacted differently when they learned what had happened. Some were shocked. Some were supportive. A few were uncomfortable, unsure of what to say. Maya learned quickly that she didn't owe anyone the full story. She shared what she felt comfortable sharing and kept the rest for herself. Her healing didn't need an audience. The biggest change wasn't around her. It was within her. She no longer questioned her instincts. She trusted herself in a way she never had before. The experience with her cheating husband had taught her something painful but powerful. Ignoring the truth doesn't protect you, but facing it can set you free. There were moments of sadness. Healing isn't a straight line. Some days, memories surfaced unexpectedly. A song, a place, a routine they once shared. Maya let herself feel those moments without judgment. She didn't romanticize the past, but she didn't erase it either. It had been real, even if it hadn't lasted. Over time, Daniel became part of her past instead of the center of her thoughts. She stopped wondering what he was doing or who he was with. That curiosity faded naturally, replaced by focus on her own growth. The affair that once consumed her thoughts now felt distant, like a lesson learned rather than an open wound. Maya also learned how deeply betrayal can change a person. Not just the one who is hurt, but the one who causes it. Daniel's life didn't fall apart overnight, but it changed. The image he had built cracked. The trust he lost didn't come back easily. Consequences didn't scream. They settled in quietly, shaping his days in ways he hadn't anticipated. As for Maya, she didn't rush into anything new. She wasn't afraid of love, but she respected it more now. She understood that trust is built through consistency, not promises. That loyalty shows up in actions, not words. And that love should never require shrinking yourself to keep someone else comfortable. The story of her marriage became something she could talk about without pain. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer defined her. She wasn't the woman who got cheated on. She was the woman who chose herself when the truth came out. Looking back, Maya realized that the signs had always been there. The distance, the excuses, the subtle shifts she once ignored. But instead of blaming herself for missing them, she honored how she responded when she finally saw clearly. Growth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from courage. If there was one thing she hoped people would take from her story, it was this. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes the strongest response isn't loud confrontation, but quiet action. And sometimes, walking away with dignity is more powerful than staying and begging for honesty. The cheating husband who thought he was smart learned a hard truth. Intelligence used to deceive eventually turns inward. Lies always collapse under their own weight. Control is an illusion when built on betrayal. Maya didn't need revenge to win. She won by refusing to lose herself. In the end, there was no dramatic revenge, no public scene, no loud victory. Just a woman who trusted herself, protected her future, and stepped forward without fear. The marriage ended, but her life didn't. It opened. Maya stood one morning at the window of her quiet home, coffee in hand, sunlight spilling across the floor. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't waiting for anything to happen. She was present, grounded, at peace. And that was the real ending of the story. Not heartbreak, not betrayal, but healing, self-respect, and the quiet power of choosing yourself when it matters most.